Welcome back to the MyRestyling channel. Today we're going to see how to restore this beautiful commode, presumably from the mid-1970s, with a gorgeous veneer on top made of solid wood. It's really very heavy, and at the time it was probably very expensive, but now it's really damaged. Now I'll show you that it has a lot of woodworm holes, especially here on the surface. It's a shame to see these holes on such a beautiful veneer, but they're all over the piece as well. And also, look here on the side. What huge holes it has. Here, take a look. So let's try to restore it after we've obviously kept it sealed for 40 days with woodworm treatment inside plastic wrap. First of all, I immediately tried to strip the top surface back to the wood because it was a shame for all this beautiful veneer to be so covered up. With all that polish on top, you can see what beautiful wood was underneath. Really lovely. It's just a pity that it was also full of woodworm holes, so it still needed to be fixed. Here you can clearly see the big holes on the surface, which I obviously had to fill in later. But as you can see, the wood was really beautiful. As you can see here, it's really clear. They had used different types of wood with really different colors, so we put tape over the darker wood section, precisely because I wanted to recolor the top surface. But if I had colored everything together, the difference would still have shown through. The difference between the woods would still be visible. So I wanted to darken the right side first, and then I would even everything out on the left side as well. And in theory, the difference in the wood would no longer be visible. I decided to do a wash with the chocolate color on the top of the dresser. So I put in a little bit of color and then literally diluted it with 200% water. Probably because I also wanted it very light, so I really used very little color. I mixed everything well and applied my diluted color. This technique is specifically used to create a glaze on raw surfaces, or even if they're not raw but are colored with another base color to create shading effects. So it's a very useful technique. Keep it in mind. At this point, I took a rag and lightened the color. The diluted color I had applied precisely because I didn't want it to be too dark. And also to remove the excess since it was very wet. In this way, the wash, that is the diluted color, penetrates directly into the wood fibers. Then I removed the tape I had previously put on the piece of wood with the different darker color, because I was going to apply a second coat of color to blend everything together. Then I decided to paint over all the filler spots I had done earlier using a small brush. So I took a bit of chocolate color and painted over all the woodworm filler spots. With a second coat of color, these would then be covered and all the brown would become uniform. Then I decided to use an oil that I made myself at home, which also contains carnauba wax, so it's very protective, and to apply it to the surface where I had done the wash. Because unfortunately I wasn't satisfied with this wash. I found it too dull and I didn't like the look of the top as well. Sometimes you just have to be patient, but it's normal to change your mind. So I applied this oil and I'll give you the recipe later. Maybe I'll even make a video about it. With the recipe, you can make it yourself at home. I applied this oil evenly and then wiped it off with a cloth. I liked it much more even though it turned out a bit darker, but the wood grain was much more visible. So I completely changed the project and applied this beautiful oil over the entire surface. Of course, here too, you always remove the excess with a cloth, otherwise it will all get stained. After that, I applied my natural vegan wax on top of the oil because I found that the surface had still become a little too dark. And you know that wax acts a bit like an eraser, so by applying it over the oil, the pigments lightened up a bit. Let's say that the wax removed some of the oil's pigments, the brown pigments, from the oil. Now it's not very clear on video, but I assure you that with this method, the surface became much lighter. Then I took a very, very fine steel wool pad, the quadruple 0, 4 zeros, and I rubbed it firmly over the entire surface so that both the oil and the wax I had applied would really penetrate into the wood fibers. You need to press down very well, but it really has to be extremely fine, so the finest one available is the one with 4 zeros. In this way, everything we've applied to the surface really gets absorbed perfectly by the wood. Finally, we've reached the part where we add color. I took a bit of Rosalyn and a bit of Whiteness. You know that ours are not ready-made paints? So inside the package, you'll find this little sachet, in this case the Whiteness, that needs to be prepared. So you put the contents of the sachet into a container, add the amount of water indicated on the package. There are full instructions on the package and it tells you how much water to add for each color. Then mix everything well. After you've mixed it well, blend it with a kitchen whisk, that's important. Make sure to set aside one whisk specifically for your paint mixing and continue to blend the mixture for at least 3 to 4 minutes. After that, first add the resin that you find inside the package. You have a little bottle with the resin already measured out, so you just need to pour it in without measuring anything and mix everything well. Then pour your paint into a jar using a strainer to help you. Strain it to avoid lumps. Why aren't our paints ready to use? Because these are paints that don't contain preservatives, so obviously they can't be pre-mixed, otherwise they wouldn't last. I did the same thing with the Rosalyn, so I always took the packet that's inside. I emptied the package into a container. Next, I carefully poured in my water, making sure to use the exact amount specified on the package, and then I thoroughly mixed all the ingredients together until smooth. I processed and blended it with my blender until you see it reaches a smooth and creamy consistency, so it should only take you a few minutes. I added the primer. You in fact have the little bottle in the package already pre-measured. I mixed it well again, everything. After that, I poured my Rosalyn into the container provided in the package, so you don't even need to buy it, always filtering it with a strainer to avoid lumps. You can see what a beautiful cream it turned out to be. It became very, very creamy. You can find these paints on our website MyRestyling.com. They do not contain preservatives, so they are completely natural and therefore do not cause allergic reactions. And here are my two paints ready, Whiteness and Rosalyn, so white and pink. I took a container, any kind, I had a kitchen one, and I started preparing my paint. Let's say I wanted a pink that was very, very light. So first of all, I put in a generous amount of white. I measured with spoons, but you can decide whether to use a scale or just use spoons. I put in a lot of whiteness directly, so a lot of white, because I already knew I wanted a very, very light pink. So I put in a lot of white right away so that I could then just add the amount of pink I wanted. Then I added a few spoonfuls of pink until I like the color, so it's up to you to decide. Then I mixed everything together very well to see if I like the color. So this is the color I ended up with. I closed everything up and wrote down the quantities I used in case I needed to make it again. So 6 tablespoons of whiteness and 1 tablespoon of Rosalyn. Before painting, while my paint was resting, I let it rest for at least a day, which is better basically. Don't use it right away. Prepare it the day before. I started removing all the hardware from the drawers because obviously I couldn't paint over the handles, the covers, the handles and everything. So I started taking everything off. Be careful with this step because they're a bit tough. These little pieces, so you need to apply pressure, but you also have to be careful not to break everything. Once I had removed all the hardware, I put it in a container and added coarse salt and vinegar. Enough to more or less cover all the handles. I left them in this solution for a couple of hours. After that, I took it off and started scrubbing all the hardware with a fine scouring pad, then always with a scouring pad. 00040. Look how beautiful the handles have become. They've all cleaned up and are back to their original color. I'd say a pale gold, almost a champagne color. Very, very beautiful. You can use this process on all old handles. They really come out shining. Before painting, I decided to do a stencil with texture paste. Here is our texture paste, which you can always find on our website, MyRestyling.com. And I decided to mix it with marble powder to create a rough paste. So I put a little bit of texture paste on a small plate, which, as you can see, looks a lot like putty. And it's ideal for making raised stencils. Then I added a spoonful of marble powder and mixed everything well, all of it. So I began the process by first carefully positioning my stencil and then firmly securing it with masking tape in the precise spot where I had originally intended it to be. After that, I slowly began the process of spreading the thick, grainy paste that I had just finished making. With this paste, it's really easy to do stencils because being grainy and a bit rustic, imperfections are much less noticeable compared to the smooth one. And here is the front of my drawer with the stencil. Then I did the same thing on the side of the furniture, covering the entire side section. Then I took my paint, which was a mix of Rosalyn and Whiteness that I had made the day before, and I added Antique Relief to it, which is Stamperia's texturizing powder, specifically to create a textured paint, because the furniture had a lot of imperfections. This way, the imperfections disappear and are no longer visible. I really had very little powder left in the jar. I used it all and I created this paint. Let's say that it gives the furniture a texture. So I mixed it very well and then started painting. I started on the side where I had done my raised stencil. Look, you can see right away that it gives perfect coverage even with the first coat. Obviously I applied 2 coats, but it already has excellent coverage. And with the powder inside, it covers even more. You can either apply it smoothly or dab it if you want to give even more texture to the finish. Look at how absolutely perfectly. This color covers everything seamlessly. And you can also clearly see the raised pattern of the stencil underneath, which I think is very elegant. I continued like this on the rest of the furniture as well. You can see that I both spread and dabbed here too. First, I applied the paint smoothly to get excellent coverage right away. And then I dabbed it to really give this texture to the finish and to the furniture, and also to hide any little imperfections. This is an excellent method if you have damaged furniture like this. After applying 2 coats, I got ready. My pale gold acrylic paint made using pale gold pigments and glossy acrita. You can see I put a little bit of pigment in a small jar, and then I used acrylic resin and glossy acrita. You can always find all these products on the MyRestyling.com website. There isn't really a specific rule for making this gold paint. You can add the glossy acrylic and then mix until the paint is just right for you. It really takes just a minute. It's super easy to make. You stir it, and when you find it has the right consistency, you can use it. Otherwise, you can add more pigments or acrylic as you like. So this is how mine turned out. I liked it nice and thick. So I stopped there and used it just like that. It's really very, very simple to make. So I started applying it with a small brush over all the little flowers without putting the stencil mask back on, but simply going over them with a brush. I know this precise work can be a bit tedious and also quite time-consuming, but I assure you it turns out really well. These are the details that really make a restyling special because they add so much value to it. Obviously, you need to have time and patience. You see, you go over the whole design slowly with a small brush and touch everything up. You have to be very patient. At the end of everything, I protected my work with our supernatural vegan wax. You know that our paint always needs to be protected, either with a wax or with a protective finish or liquid. This wax is different from the others because it is completely vegan, so it has no animal-derived ingredients. It doesn't contain beeswax, but it does contain jojoba oil, candelilla wax, which is a plant-based wax, and also carnauba wax, which is a super protective plant-based wax. So the furniture will stay protected for many years to come, and it's much, much faster. A very important thing is that right after applying it, you need to remove the excess with a microfiber cloth, just like I'm doing now in this video. This will help the wax crystallize much sooner. Then I took the natural vegan brown wax, which is actually brown in color, just like the other wax but pigmented. And I started to antique the furniture because I wanted to give it a bit more character. It seemed a little flat to me as it was. So I applied my brown wax, but obviously I put on too much, so I didn't really like it that much. So I took the vegan wax again and tried to lighten it with a cloth, removing the excess brown wax. You see that with a cloth I just pick up the wax from the jar of neutral wax and I remove the excess brown. Did you know that neutral wax acts like an eraser? And so I continued by applying a wax patina over the entire piece of furniture. As a final touch. Then I took the wax patina from Stamperia in the color Antique Brass, which is very similar to pale gold. I put a little bit of it on my finger and then I spread it on the handle. Look at the shine it gives. You can see a beautiful shine on the metal of the handle, very, very similar to the pale gold of the little flowers. Applying it with your finger also allows you to avoid smudging and to do a really nice job. By the way, this is a wax that dries quickly. From morning to evening, it's already completely dry and you can handle your handles. So even on metal, it dries very quickly. So I recommend it to you. You can always find it on the website. Look how beautiful this handle has become with this wax on it. And here it is, the piece of furniture is finished. In my opinion, it turned out very elegant. Look how beautiful this veneering is, done with our oil. And I hope this video has been useful to you and that all the techniques I showed you will also be helpful for your future restyling projects. I remind you that all the products I used in this project can be found on our website MyRestyling.com or in our store at Piazza Giotto 4 in San Giorgio Bigarello in the province of Mantua. If you want to see the furniture, come to the store where it is on display. So of course, I look forward to seeing you all in the store. Bye. See you in the next video.